Hello, I'm Alita Winternheimer, your personal writing coach at Word Essential, and I've got another 60-second writing tip for you. Today's tip is about pacing. After I posted my video on embodying your character, I had a great question. Someone wrote in to ask, won't all of that embodying business slow down the pace of your scene, especially if it's an action scene? Well, the short answer is no, it won't. In fact, it will enhance your scene because action scenes aren't just about the movements of characters on a page interacting with stuff like cars and guns and horses. They're about the thrill that the reader gets when living that action vicariously through the perspective of the point of view character. Now, how do you know that you're doing it right and that you aren't going to mess up your pacing by embodying your character? I've got a few tips to help you with that today. The first one is to keep in mind that action is enhanced by experience, not information. So if you saw the Embody Your Character video, you'll remember that I read from Dark Corners in Ska Call. If you didn't see it or need to see it again, there's a link in the notes to this video. In the scene I read in that video, I shared with you a moment when Jess, my main character, goes to buy a gun and learn how to shoot it. That is where I explored her handling a weapon for the first time, where I showed the information about the gun, its make and model, and how she loads it and all that kind of stuff. And the reason was because when I got to the climax, where Jess actually has to fire the gun, I didn't want to slow down my pacing and feed you a bunch of information about how she acquired the gun, how she learned to shoot it, and what kind of gun it is. All of that was put in a chapter before the climax, where it was appropriate, pacing-wise, to give the reader information. If I had put that information into my climax, it would have ruined the pacing, absolutely, because information, when it's out of place, causes drag. You want to make sure that you introduce new elements before the action scene, not during that scene. So let's read a few paragraphs from the climax of Dark Corners in Ska Call. Again, if you need to go back to the Embody Your Character video, I have a link to it in the notes below this video. Jess reached into the shoulder bag, the Velcro sounding loudly, and withdrew the gun. She held it with both hands, the way she'd been taught. Her arms trembled, but that shouldn't matter at such close range. The man laughed. He set the wine bottle on a shelf and held up his hands. "Get back." She took a step toward him. He took a step toward her. Jess faltered, rocked back on her heels, and staggered accidentally away from the man. She hadn't meant to give up ground, but she hadn't expected him to step into the gun. He grabbed it, his hands on hers, squeezing them hard around the Glock's textured grip. He raised the gun and pressed the barrel to his forehead. Jess pulled against him, trying to bring the gun away from his head, or at least to free her hands, to have nothing to do with this. He wouldn't let her. "Go on then. Your finger's on the trigger, isn't it? All you have to do is pull." Jess whimpered. "What will you tell them? Will you say it was self-defense?" He affected a mocking tone. "I had to kill him. You see, he offered me a glass of wine." He leaned into the gun, holding Jess's hands under his own. Each time she managed to step backwards, he came with her. Are you a killer, Jessica? Can you do this? He lifted his face. His forehead bore the round indentation of the barrel. Go on, he urged. Become a killer, just like me. She pulled her finger against the trigger, felt the slack, then the tension. One more tiny exertion. That was all that stood between her killing and not killing somebody. Okay, so note in this scene that part of embodying Jess is the experience she has of pulling the trigger, of taking up the slack and feeling that pressure, and her acute awareness of all that stands between her and killing somebody, which is one tiny exertion on her part. Now, if Jess were a police officer or military, she wouldn't feel that moment the same way, because she would be experienced with a gun, she would be used to firing it, and this probably wouldn't be her first time firing it at a person. She would also be trained to handle this kind of duress. So my character, Jessica Vernon, has never held a gun before she went and bought this one. It's all very new to her. So she has a sort of hyper-awareness that another character wouldn't. And I bring that to bear on this action scene by embodying her. And that helps to raise the tension, because I want the reader to experience this moment the way Jess does, not the way anybody else would do so. Now, here's your 60-second writing tip. It won't even take that long. I've got 3 simple points for you to remember. 1, pacing is enhanced by the experience of the action, not by information about the action. 2, inserting information into an action scene will cause drag. Information is not the same as experience, so do keep embodying your point of view character. And 3, when you have to introduce new elements to a story, like Jess buying her first gun and learning how to shoot it, don't introduce it to the reader during the action scene. Make sure you find a place for it before the action scene. I'm Alita Winternheimer, your writing coach at Word Essential. Thank you so much for watching. Well, that was today's 60-second writing tip. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something that you can now apply to your story craft. And if you're writing a book, fiction or nonfiction, I would be happy to help you. I'm a developmental editor and a writing coach, and I help people from idea generation through final revision. I teach people storycraft while focusing on your specific project and your personal needs. Check out wordessential.com. That's where I have my services listed, and you'll also find the Word Essential blog. While you're there, please sign up for my email list. You will receive the 9-page PDF booklet, The Word Essential Guide to Revision. Covers fiction and nonfiction. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great writing day.